Desperation gripped my heart as I stepped onto the pentagram outlined with ancient runes. A sinister darkness enveloped the room, and the air was thick with the scent of incense and decay. I cast one last glance at the portrait of my great-grandmother, her stern gaze accusing me from the wall. "Forgive me, great-grandmother," I whispered. "I have no other choice." I closed my eyes, focusing on the image of a distant world where magic reigned and there was no cruel Prince Aldo obsessed with my hand. And I whispered the words of the spell. The world spun around me, plunging into a whirlpool of darkness. Nausea washed over me, and then, nothing. I woke up lying on soft grass, tears washing over my face. It couldn't be. I'm alive! I escaped. But the joy quickly faded. Something was wrong. My body felt foreign, as if I had put on tight, uncomfortable clothes. I sat up, horror dawning as I realized I was wearing a simple dress of coarse cotton, and my hands were calloused. Not my delicate aristocratic hands, but the hands of a commoner. Suddenly, a crumpled piece of paper fell from the dress pocket. I unfolded it and tears welled up in my eyes again. It was a letter of expulsion from the Academy of Magical Arts. For failing the entrance exams and immoral behavior. I read, unable to believe my eyes. I, Aurora de Lorenzo, heiress of a noble lineage, kidnapped and defiled by the prince, now found myself in the body of a commoner named Alia, who had just died of a broken heart. Oh, it seems I jumped from the frying pan into the fire. That night I sat on the grass for a long time, staring at the stars. How am I to live on? How do I reclaim my body? And what am I to do with this heap of problems left to me by Alia? Suddenly a glimmer of light appeared in the distance. Someone was coming towards me. A figure emerged from the darkness. Tall, with dark hair, dressed in a black cloak. He approached and stopped, piercing me with his gaze. "Who are you?" he asked in a low, velvety voice. I don't know," I whispered, feeling a shiver down my spine. "You're Aurora," he said confidently. "I found you." He reached out his hand. He was tall and imposing, with a face sculpted as if from marble. His eyes, dark blue like the night sky, gleamed with a mysterious light. I hesitated to take his hand. "How do you know my name?" I whispered, barely audible. He smiled. "I know many things, Aurora. And I'm here to help you." He reached out his hand again, and this time, despite my fear and mistrust, I took it. A warm current ran through my body, and suddenly foreign memories flooded my mind. I saw Alia, a girl with sad eyes, in love with the son of an influential mage who ignored her feelings. He promised her help getting into the academy, but then backed out, and Alia, unable to bear the disappointment, ended her life. Tears welled up in my eyes again. "Alia," I whispered, feeling her pain as if it were my own. The man looked at me with pity. "Don't worry, Aurora, she rests in peace now. You've given her a chance at a new life, and yourself a chance at revenge." "A revenge?" I asked skeptically. "Yes," he nodded. "For those who betrayed you, who took everything from you." There was steel in his voice, and I felt a flame of anger kindling within me. My anger, but also Alia's. I wouldn't forget how they turned me into a fugitive, how they forced me to flee from my own world. "Who are you?" I asked again, this time firmer. "I am Arian," he replied. "And I am the one who will help you reclaim everything that was taken from you." Arian explained that he was a mage expelled from the academy for unorthodox teaching methods. He sensed Aurora's magical essence reflected in Alia's body, and thus came to her aid. He offered me a plan. He would teach me magic so I could enter the academy and seek revenge against Prince Aldo, who now led the Council of Mages. Doubts plagued me. Could I trust this stranger? But I had no other choice. I wanted to reclaim my life, and revenge became my sole motivation. We set out on the road, far from the village where Alia had died. Arian proved to be an excellent teacher, his words clear and his movements confident. He taught me to control the magic dormant within me and to sense the world around me. Days turned into weeks and I made rapid progress. With each passing day, I felt my strength growing, my magic coming alive in my hands. But along with that, so did my anxiety. The closer the day of the entrance exam approached, the stronger my nerves became. What awaited me at the academy? How would I confront Aldo? And could I seek revenge without becoming the person who broke me? The journey with Arian was filled with learning and surprises. He turned out to be not only a talented mage but also a wonderful conversationalist. For hours we talked about everything: magic, the world beyond the empire, his past at the academy. From his stories I learned that he was expelled on unfounded charges of using dark magic. He protested his innocence, but the Council of Mages, led at the time by Aldo's father, refused to listen to him. These stories stirred sympathy within me for Arian. We both became victims of injustice, and that united us. One morning, when we stopped near a picturesque lake, Arian announced, "Today we begin serious preparation. You need to learn to conceal your true essence." He explained that there was a special amulet at the academy capable of detecting magic from other worlds. If activated during the entrance exam, my secret would be exposed. Arian taught me to mask my aura, creating the illusion of an ordinary human girl. It was challenging as my magical power was potent and eager to burst forth. Several weeks of intense training passed. Finally, the day arrived for our departure to the capital, where the academy was located. The journey to the capital was long and exhausting. We traveled in a horse-drawn carriage rented from a small town. Along the way, Arian told me about the academy itself. It was a magnificent castle built of white marble towering atop a hill in the middle of the capital. Within its walls, talented mages from across the empire studied, and gaining admittance was considered a great honor. However, behind the luxurious facade, as Arian had described, lay many secrets and intrigues. The Council of Mages governing the academy consisted of influential mages who often abused their power. Listening to his tales, I grew increasingly anxious. Would I be able to survive in this cruel world of magic and intrigue? Finally, the towers of the capital appeared on the horizon. My heart pounded in my chest like a bird trapped in a cage. I was approaching the place where I was to seek revenge on my tormentor, but at the same time it could be my downfall. When the carriage stopped near the city gates, Arian took my hand. "I remember, Aurora," he said, his voice serious, "you are not alone. I will always be there to help you." I nodded, unable to tear my gaze away from his dark blue eyes. Was it sympathy, or was there something more I saw in their depths? The capital impressed me with its grandeur and magnitude. Tall spires of buildings reached towards the sky, and carriages pulled by magnificent horses rushed along the cobblestone streets. People in vibrant attire hurried about their business, their voices blending into the endless urban hum. Arian rented a room in a small tavern nearby the academy. He warned me that he couldn't openly appear within the institution's walls, as mages of the council were still searching for him. The next day I set off for the academy. My heart hammered in my chest like a blacksmith's hammer. Armed with a forged expulsion letter of Alia's that Arian expertly crafted, I approached the massive oak doors. At the threshold I was met by a stern man in a gray cloak. He carefully examined the document and me, then nodded and let me inside. The academy turned out to be even more impressive than I had imagined. Spacious halls with high ceilings adorned with tapestries depicting mythical creatures, long corridors smelling of old books and herbs, all created an atmosphere of mystery and power. I found the auditorium where the entrance exam was taking place. Many young men and women dressed in fine clothes had gathered around. Their faces radiated confidence and ambition. And then I felt his gaze. He was sitting by the window on a separate chair. Prince Aldo. My body recoiled with disgust. He was no longer the young boy I once knew. Time had hardened his features, but in his cold, gray eyes I still saw the same predator who had shattered my life. The exam began. Each student stood before a semi-transparent sphere and had to channel their magical energy into it. The sphere shimmered with different colors depending on the element the student wielded. Finally, my turn approached. I recalled Arian's words and focused, creating the illusion of an ordinary human girl. I approached the sphere, reached out my hand and touched it. A moment of anticipation, and the sphere lit up with a soft white light. A faint echo of my true power, but enough to pass the exam. Breathing a sigh of relief, I returned to my seat. From the corner of my eye I saw Aldo watching me. His lips twitched into a barely noticeable smile. What was he plotting? The entrance exams concluded. I was admitted to the academy, much to the surprise and displeasure of other applicants. Only a few with exceptional scores like mine, masked, were accepted. The next day marked the beginning of classes. I received my schedule and a room in the student dormitory. The room was small but tidy, with 2 beds and a small window overlooking the city garden. My roommate turned out to be a girl named Liana, cheerful and talkative. She enthusiastically told me about the academy, the professors, and the secret ball that would take place the following week. I listened to her, trying not to reveal my excitement. The ball? It meant that I would have to face Aldo again. The first days of classes were challenging. The subjects taught at the academy were unfamiliar to me, and other students treated me condescendingly, considering me a weak link. But I didn't give up. Remembering Alia, I realized that I had to become strong to avenge her and myself. One day, wandering the corridors, I accidentally ran into Arian. He stood by the window looking out at the city with a solemn expression. Arian, I whispered, hesitating to approach closer. He turned around and looked surprised to see me. Aurora, he said. How are you? I told him about my studies, my impressions, and the upcoming ball. His face became serious. Be careful, he warned. Influential people will be at the ball. If someone recognizes your true essence, it could turn into a disaster. We agreed to meet the next night to discuss how I should behave at the ball and how best to mask my magical aura. The next day I began preparing for the ball. Liana eagerly helped me choose a dress. It was a soft blue color with a shiny bodice and a long skirt. While I tried on the dress, Liana told me that members of the Council of Mages and Prince Aldo were invited to the ball. My heart tightened. Would I be able to endure this encounter? But it was too late to back out. I had to play my part and not reveal my nervousness. Finally, the day of the ball arrived. Excitement enveloped me like a tight silk scarf. I eagerly awaited my meeting with Arian, as his advice could be crucial. Arian was waiting for me in a cozy corner of the garden not far from the academy. He carefully examined me, his gaze tracing over the blue dress that accentuated the slender curves of my figure. "You look wonderful, Aurora," he said softly, his voice like velvet. I blushed slightly under his watchful gaze. "But remember," he continued, seriousness returning to his voice, "be cautious. Don't use magic and try not to attract unnecessary attention to yourself." I nodded, remembering his advice. Arian cast additional charms on me to conceal my true essence. Together we entered the hall where many guests had already gathered. The magnificent hall was illuminated by thousands of magical lights flickering in different colors. Musicians played on exquisite instruments, creating a magical melody. I looked around, impressed by the opulence and elegance of the guests. Ladies in lavish gowns, gentlemen in sophisticated suits, they all danced with an air of importance. And then I saw him. Prince Aldo stood by the window, his dark figure standing out against the bright backdrop. He was talking to a tall, gray-haired man whom I recognized from portraits, the head of the Council of Mages, Aldo's father. A shiver ran down my spine. These people had ruined my life, and now I found myself in the same room with them. Unaware of my anxiety, Liana pulled me onto the dance floor. I could barely focus on the waltz steps, constantly feeling Aldo's gaze on me. He approached. My pulse quickened. "Aurora," he whispered, stopping in front of us. "Oh, what a surprise." He spoke deviously as he had before, as if nothing had happened. "Your Highness," I replied, trying to maintain a cold and aloof tone. He looked at me carefully, as if trying to discern something suspicious. Did he notice anything? "You've changed a lot," he said, his lips stretching into a sly smile. "Much more interesting than before." I felt anger boiling inside me. This man had taken everything from me, and now he was playing this game with me. "I'm sorry, Your Highness," I said, trying not to scream. "I need to go." But Aldo didn't hurry to step aside. He leaned closer to my ear and whispered, "You know, Aurora, I always knew you weren't as simple as you seemed. And I can't wait to find out who you really are." His words sent a chill through me. Did he suspect something? I hurried to leave the dance floor, looking around for Arian. But he was nowhere to be found. My heart pounded in my chest like a bird trapped in a cage. Aldo's words wouldn't leave my mind. Did he suspect something? Could he uncover my secret? I wandered the corridors of the academy, trying to calm down. I needed to find Arian as soon as possible. His advice was crucial to me right now. Suddenly I heard quiet voices coming from one of the classrooms. Approaching closer, I saw Arian and a man I didn't recognize. They were talking about forbidden artifacts and dangerous experiments. I nodded, remembering his advice. Arian cast additional spells on me to conceal my true essence. Together we entered the hall, where many guests had already gathered. The grand hall was illuminated by thousands of magical lights shimmering in different colors. Musicians played on elegant instruments, creating a magical melody. I looked around, impressed by the splendor and elegance of the guests. Ladies in lavish dresses, gentlemen in sophisticated suits, all of them twirled in the waltz with an air of importance. And then I saw him. Prince Aldo stood by the window, his dark figure standing out against the bright backdrop. He was talking to a tall, gray-haired man whom I recognized from portraits, the head of the Council of Mages, Aldo's father. A chill ran down my spine. These people had ruined my life, and now I found myself in the same room with them. Unaware of my agitation, Liana dragged me onto the dance floor. I could barely focus on the waltz, constantly feeling Aldo's gaze on me. He approached. My pulse quickened. "Aurora," he whispered, stopping in front of us. "Oh, what a surprise." He spoke softly as before, as if nothing had happened. "Your Highness," I replied, trying to maintain a cold and aloof tone. He looked at me intently as if trying to see something. Did he notice something suspicious? "You've changed a lot," he said, his lips stretching into a cunning smile. "Much more interesting than before." I felt anger boiling inside me. This man had taken everything from me, and now he was playing this game with me. "Excuse me, Your Highness," I said, trying not to scream. "I need to go." But Aldo didn't rush to leave. He leaned in close to my ear and whispered, "You know, Aurora, I always knew you weren't as simple as you seemed. And I can't wait to find out who you really are." His words sent a shiver down my spine. Did he suspect something? I hurried to leave the dance floor, looking for Arian. But he was nowhere to be found. My heart pounded in my chest like a trapped bird. Aldo's words wouldn't leave my mind. Did he suspect something? Could he expose my secret? I wandered the corridors of the academy, trying to calm down. I needed to find Arian as soon as possible. His advice was crucial right now. Suddenly, I heard quiet voices coming from one of the classrooms. Approaching closer, I saw Arian and a man I didn't recognize. They were talking about forbidden artifacts and dangerous experiments. I became curious, but I didn't dare interrupt their conversation. Their topic seemed to involve secrets that perhaps weren't meant for my ears. Having lit the fire in her dorm room, Aurora immersed herself in thoughts. The plan to infiltrate the academy's underground required thoroughness and caution. She needed to find a way to bypass security without attracting undue attention. Suddenly, words from Arian's tale about secret passages and traps within the walls of the ancient building floated back into her memory. Perhaps there was information about these passages somewhere in the library. The next day, armed with a flashlight and hiding her excitement behind a facade of a regular student, Aurora found herself back in the library. She spent long hours poring over old manuscripts and maps. Finally, luck was on her side. In the notebooks of one of the former academy professors, she found a mention of a secret passage hidden behind a bookshelf in a neglected section of the library. Holding her breath, Aurora made her way to the designated spot. Pushing aside the heavy bookshelf, she saw a narrow, dark passage leading deeper into the underground. Fear tightened her chest, but the thought of Arian and the possibility of preventing disaster urged her forward. Descending the stone steps, Aurora illuminated her path with the flashlight. The fiery light reflected off damp walls, creating eerie dancing shadows around her. Sometimes she thought she heard footsteps or faint whispers, but when she looked around, she saw nothing but darkness and stone walls. The passage led her to a spacious underground chamber illuminated by faint, magical light. In the center of the chamber, on a pedestal, lay a massive artifact emitting a barely perceptible pulsation. Aurora realized this was exactly what she was looking for. But suddenly she heard a quiet voice behind her. "Aurora," a familiar voice sounded. "I knew you would be here." Emerging from the shadows was the figure of Arian. His face was pale and his eyes burned with a feverish gleam. "Arian?" Aurora was surprised. "But what are you doing here?" Arian approached closer, his gaze fixed on the artifact. "I was looking for it too," he said, his voice hoarse. "I need its power to enact my revenge." Aurora understood that Arian had fallen under the influence of the dark magic of the artifact. She took a step back, trying to prevent him from acting recklessly. "Arian, don't do this," she pleaded. "This artifact is dangerous, it will consume you." But Arian didn't hear her. He reached out to the artifact, his eyes burning with fanatical light. Aurora faced a difficult choice. She needed to stop Arian while also not revealing her true essence. And perhaps now was the time to use her hidden training. Adrenaline pulsed through Aurora's veins. She realized that she needed to act quickly and decisively. Arian, blinded by the desire for revenge, ignored her pleas. He reached out to the artifact, his touch on the verge of activating its dark power. Recalling her lessons in magic control, Aurora had an idea. She focused, gathering the remnants of her hidden power, and created an illusion around Arian. Before him stood the figure of his sworn enemy, the one he sought to avenge himself upon. Arian abruptly stopped, his eyes widened with rage. He attacked the illusion, releasing streams of dark energy. Aurora stepped back, barely restraining herself from intervening directly. She needed to give Arian time to vent his anger, hoping it would weaken the artifact's influence. The battle with the illusion raged on, filling the underground with rumbling and flashes. Arian was oblivious to everything around him, completely consumed by his desire for revenge. With each passing minute, his attacks grew weaker and his movements more chaotic. Finally, with a last cry of fury, the illusion dissipated. Arian, breathing heavily, looked around and saw Aurora standing nearby. Surprise mixed with confusion on his face. "Aurora," he whispered as if not believing his eyes. "What is happening here?" Aurora approached him slowly, her voice firm but calm. "Arian," she said. "You're under the influence of the artifact. Stop before it's too late." Her words, like a cold shower, sobered Arian. He looked at his hand reaching for the artifact and pulled it back as if burned. His face turned pale, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. "What have I done?" he whispered, his voice trembling. Aurora knew he needed support now, not condemnation. She came closer and put her hand on his shoulder. "It's okay, Arian," she said soothingly. "We'll get through this together. But first we need to get out of here." Together they left the underground, Aurora supporting Arian all the way. Back in their room, they discussed the situation. Arian deeply regretted his actions, realizing how close he was to succumbing to dark magic. Aurora told him about her abilities and true nature. To her relief, Arian took the news calmly. He confessed that he had always felt something special about her. Together, they decided to destroy the artifact to prevent it from harming anyone else. With Arian's ancient knowledge, they found a ritual for its destruction. After the artifact turned to dust, Aurora and Arian felt relief. They knew they had averted disaster, and their friendship became even stronger, tested by trust and mutual support. The next day, Arian returned to his life, secretly continuing to help Aurora. Meanwhile, Aurora continued her studies at the academy, preparing to confront Aldo and clear her name. Her path was fraught with danger, but now she wasn't alone. She had a friend who believed in her, and together they were ready to face any challenges that lay ahead. And although Aurora's secret remained undisclosed, she knew she could no longer be passive. She needed to act, gather evidence against Aldo, and find allies who would help her expose him and clear her name. The following days were filled with preparation. Aurora studied diligently to gain trust among the students and faculty. She searched for any mentions of forbidden practices and the activities of the Council of Mages. She approached several classmates who shared her views on justice and sought change at the academy. One day, while strolling through the city park, Aurora stumbled upon a group of students lively discussing a secret gathering scheduled for the upcoming Friday in an abandoned tower on the outskirts of the city. From snippets of conversation, Aurora understood that dissatisfied students, unhappy with the governance of the Council of Mages and Aldo, were planning to attend. It was her chance. Perhaps there she could find like-minded individuals who would help her in the fight against injustice and corruption. But she also realized that this gathering could be a trap, as Aldo might use it to identify and punish anyone opposing him. Aurora faced a difficult choice. She needed to weigh all the risks and make a decision that could have serious consequences for her and her friends. The heavy burden of responsibility weighed on Aurora's shoulders. Her decision to attend the secret gathering could lead to unforeseen consequences. But she couldn't ignore the chance to find allies in the fight against Aldo. On Friday evening, as darkness enveloped the city, Aurora, holding an old lantern, stepped onto the path leading to the dilapidated tower. Her heart pounded in her chest, and the cold wind pierced her to the bone, as if trying to stop her. The tower loomed ominously against the backdrop of the night sky. Its black windows, like empty eyes, stared at Aurora, instilling fear. Summoning all her courage, she approached the massive doors and cautiously opened them. Inside, it was dark and damp. The air was permeated with the smell of age and mold. Aurora climbed the stairs leading upwards, holding the lantern before her. Every step echoed with a hollow reverberation in the darkness, intensifying the sense of danger. Finally, she reached the top of the tower. There, in the spacious room illuminated by dim candles, gathered about 20 people. Their faces were obscured by hoods, but Aurora could feel their vigilant stares. "Who are you?" a hoarse voice came from the crowd. "I'm Aurora," she replied, trying to sound firm. "I came here because I believe there is injustice at the academy." One of the individuals, a tall man with a black beard, stepped forward. "We're glad to welcome you, Aurora," he said. "We, like you, seek change." Aurora sighed with relief. These people didn't seem hostile to her. Perhaps she had indeed found allies here. The man with the beard introduced himself as Armin, one of the leaders of the resistance movement. He told Aurora about their plans to overthrow Aldo and the Council of Mages. Their ideas seemed bold to her, but also risky. "We know it's dangerous," Armin said. "But we can no longer live under the yoke of tyranny." Aurora felt a surge of determination within her. She was ready to join them. "I'm with you," she said firmly. Together, they discussed their plan of action, assigned tasks, and set a time for their next meeting. Exiting the tower, Aurora felt rejuvenated. She knew dangers lay ahead, but now she wasn't alone. She had friends who shared her desire for justice. Aurora's story was just beginning. Her journey would be fraught with challenges, betrayals, and unexpected twists. But she was resolute in her determination to clear her name, restore justice, and punish those who had betrayed her. Preparing for the fight proved more challenging than Aurora had expected. Armin, the leader of the resistance movement, warned her to be cautious. They needed to act cunningly and coordinatedly to avoid arousing suspicion from Aldo and his spies. Aurora's first task was gathering information. Sneaking into the library at night, she searched for any mention of forbidden practices and Aldo's activities. She managed to find old scrolls describing rituals involving dark magic, banned by the Council of Mages due to their danger and unpredictability. The evidence she gathered was impressive, but unfortunately it didn't contain direct accusations against Aldo. Aurora needed a witness, someone who could corroborate his illegal actions. Following Armin's advice, Aurora began to bond with Liana, her former classmate. Liana, known for her inquisitiveness and dissatisfaction with the governance of the Council of Mages, could become a valuable ally. Aurora invited Liana on walks, shared her thoughts on injustice at the academy. Gradually, trust developed between them. One evening during a stroll by the lake, Aurora decided to take a risk. "Liana," she said, "I'll tell you something, but you must promise to keep it secret." Liana looked at her with surprise but nodded. Aurora revealed the secret gathering, the resistance movement, and her suspicions about Aldo. Surprise and fear mingled on Liana's face. But after long deliberation she spoke. "I've always felt that something was amiss. I believe you, Aurora. I'll help you." This agreement was a glimmer of hope for Aurora. Finally, she had not only information but also a witness. Now they needed to discuss with Armin and the rest of the resistance movement how to use this data. The next meeting took place in an underground cave outside the city, serving as a shelter for the rebels. The atmosphere was tense as they discussed the plan to expose Aldo to the Council of Mages. "We can't simply accuse him without evidence," one of the participants noted. "We have Liana's testimony and the collected materials," Aurora countered, her voice firm. "It may not be direct evidence, but it's enough to raise doubts about his activities." After lengthy debates, they decided to take action at the next meeting of the Council of Mages. Armin and several other members of the resistance movement planned to present accusations against Aldo, citing Liana's testimony and the gathered materials. Aurora knew it would be risky. Aldo wouldn't stop at anything to protect his power. But it was too late to retreat. She had come too far, and now she needed to see it through to restore justice. Tension within the academy grew with each passing day. News of the accusations planned against Aldo spread among the students and faculty, fueling rumors and dividing opinions. Aurora, Liana, and the resistance movement prepared for their presentation before the Council of Mages, understanding that their actions would determine not only their fate but also the future of the academy. The next morning, the Grand Hall of the Council of Mages was packed to capacity. Students, faculty, and council members gathered to witness this unprecedented session. Sitting among the students, Aurora felt the weight of Aldo's gaze, seated on his throne with a stony expression. Finally, the session commenced. The council's chair, the esteemed mage Eldarian, announced the accusations against Aldo. Armin, as the representative of the resistance movement, confidently presented the gathered materials and Liana's testimony. Despite the tremble in her voice, Liana spoke of her suspicions regarding Aldo's activities and his use of forbidden artifacts. She spoke truthfully and sincerely, her voice resonating in the silence of the hall. Tension escalated with each passing minute. Aldo, previously composed, suddenly rose from his throne. His face flushed with anger. "This is all lies," his voice thundered. "This is a pathetic attempt by my opponents to disgrace my name and tarnish my reputation." He tried to discredit Liana's testimony and accused the resistance movement of inciting rebellion. But his arguments seemed feeble against the gathered evidence. Debate erupted during the session. Some council members, aligned with Aldo, supported his denials, while others, impressed by the presented information, called for a more thorough investigation. Eldarian, the council's chair, maintained silence, observing the debates. His face remained impassive, but a deep contemplation shone in his eyes. Finally, when the debates subsided, Eldarian raised his hand, demanding silence. All present held their breath, awaiting his decision. "The council will consider the presented accusations and testimony," he announced. "A thorough investigation will be conducted to ascertain the truth. Until the investigation is concluded, Aldo will be suspended from his duties as chair of the council." Shock rippled through the hall. Though not a direct condemnation of Aldo, this decision was a significant step. Aurora felt a wave of relief, understanding that their efforts had not been in vain. However, she knew the fight was far from over. Aldo wouldn't surrender without a fight, and the search for conclusive evidence that would fully expose his crimes became even more crucial. Aldo's suspension from the position of chair of the council was a turning point, but the war was far from over. His remaining supporters among the council members resisted the investigation, creating bureaucratic obstacles and spreading misinformation. Aurora understood that she and the resistance movement needed to act swiftly and decisively. They had to find conclusive evidence of Aldo's crimes before he could solidify his position or erase all traces. Following Eldirian's advice, Aurora and Armin turned to the librarian, a wise old man named Octavian, who possessed deep knowledge of the Academy's history and secrets. Octavian, after hearing their story, agreed to help. He told them about the legend of the Hall of Reflections, a hidden place within the depths of the Academy where records of all events within its walls were kept. According to Octavian, these records were sealed by a powerful enchantment, and only those with a pure heart and a thirst for truth could break them. Knowing her abilities, Aurora felt a call of destiny. The search for the Hall of Reflections proved challenging. They spent weeks studying old maps and texts, deciphering riddles, and overcoming cunning traps left to guard the Academy's secrets. Finally, after extensive searching, they found the hidden entrance to the Hall of Reflections. It was a circular chamber, its walls adorned with shimmering crystals that reflected scenes from the past. Focused, Aurora attempted to break the enchantment guarding the records. Her power resonated with the crystals, and they erupted in bright light. Images of the past came to life, showing her events that had transpired within the Academy for centuries. Among these images, Aurora saw what she was looking for. She witnessed Aldo, consumed by lust for power, striking a deal with dark forces, obtaining forbidden knowledge and artifacts in exchange for a promise to serve them. The evidence was undeniable. Aurora and Armin returned to Eldirian, their hearts filled with a mixture of relief and dread. They finally had what they needed to expose Aldo, but the truth they had learned was darker than they could have imagined. The gathered evidence was staggering. Video recordings from the Hall of Reflections vividly demonstrated Aldo's deal with dark forces, revealing his true motives and the threat he posed to the Academy and the world. Aurora, Armin, and Octavian presented their findings to Eldirian and the Council of Mages. Initially, some council members refused to believe what they saw, blinded by years of trust in Aldo. But the undeniable evidence dispelled all doubts. Aldo, present at the meeting, grew furious. He denied everything, accusing Aurora and the resistance movement of fabricating evidence and committing treason. But his protests proved futile. The Council of Mages, appalled by Aldo's actions, stripped him of all positions and titles and expelled him from the Academy. However, the victory was overshadowed. Aldo's pact with dark forces turned out to be just the tip of the iceberg. Upon examining the video recordings, Aurora learned of the existence of a powerful cult that worshipped dark entities and sought to plunge the world into chaos. This information forced the Council of Mages to reconsider their priorities. They realized that the threat was much more serious than they had anticipated. Aurora, Liana, and the resistance movement, for their role in exposing Aldo and his ties to the dark cult, became heroes. Their story was told throughout the Academy, earning them respect and trust. However, Aurora knew that their struggle was not over. There was an even greater threat, and now she and her new allies had to unite to protect the world from the dark forces that sought its destruction. Despite the victory achieved, Aurora felt the burden of responsibility weighing on her. She understood that now not only her own fate rested on her shoulders, but also the fate of the entire world. On this path she faced new trials, discoveries, and perhaps even encounters with those who wielded magic similar to hers. Her story is the story of a heroine who emerged from darkness to become a beacon of light in this turbulent world. Thank you for being with us today. I hope that this story has brought you emotions. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel and click on the bell so you don't miss any of our new stories. Thank you for your support. You are the best.